Okay, civil disobedience, the meanings and the definition and the origins I had explained to you earlier in the last class. And in India itself, Gandhi was inspired and he had got ready for it. And in Lahore, they had announced Purna Swaraj or total 100% independence. Now the follow-up was that on 26th January, that was planned to be celebrated as the Independence Day, and a pledge was taken, a promise was taken. A very beautifully worded document was written and it was read aloud. But the response was not really satisfactory. And much like the disappointment that I am facing now with this response from the students, from the teachers, from the parents to this online class. So Gandhi, Nehru and other leaders of the Congress would also have faced that disappointment. So they had to find a practical way to unite people. The last thing I told you in the last class was that Gandhi was a very practical man. When they announced on 26 January to have a declaration of independence, very few people responded. But Gandhi found something that is common to everyone. What was that?
Salt.
Very good. It was salt. So let us begin today's discussion. And a very famous and historic event took place called the Salt March or the Dandi March. And this symbolized or became the face, the image of the civil disobedience movement. But it was not just salt. Let us look at the events that took place before that or leading up to that. 26 January was the Declaration of Independence. 5 days later, on 31st January, he wrote a letter to the Viceroy, Lord Irwin, and he put 11 demands. But still then, we don't get 100% support from point number 1 up to 11, except for point number 4, the abolition of salt tax. Now, what was that salt tax? Very simply, no one could make salt without permission. Now, this was very unpopular, even among the rich and the poor. And the government also had a monopoly on production. That means that no one can produce salt privately. And this also was controlled and monopolized by the British. So this very popular image of Gandhi with his walking stick. In Hindi, stick means danda or dandi. Now actually, the name of the place where he ended the salt march is actually Danda. But then Danda and Dandi mean the same thing. So it has, Dandi I think became more easy to spell or to pronounce. So the name stuck. What he meant regarding salt was actually an ultimatum. Ultimatum is like a last date. I give you also ultimatums from time to time. You submit your essay or you respond. Because, we cannot wait indefinitely. Yes, we have a lot of free time on our hands, but that doesn't mean you keep people waiting, I know, unnecessarily. He gave the last date or the deadline of 11th March. So 11 points and the deadline also 11 March, a very symbolic message, a very powerful message. So he said, if you don't fulfill these demands by 11 March, we, the Indians of India, will launch a civil disobedience campaign. So 11 March 1930 happened. Viceroy Lord Irwin, he was unwilling to negotiate. So the next day, 12th March 1930, he began the Salt March. So let's look at the events that happened. Firstly, the distance. The distance-wise, it is 240 miles. Gandhi had an ashram in Sabarmati. Sabarmati is in Ahmedabad. It's on the outskirts, so in the suburbs of Ahmedabad. Then they walked up to the coastal town of Dundee or Danda. So 240 miles, and they walked for 24 days. That means they covered about 10 miles in a day. Now, wherever he walked, Gandhi also took an opportunity to stop and to explain to them, to sermon to them, to preach to them the meaning of independence, of satyagraha, non-violence, and how you can utilize it to defy the British and to have independence for India. So 24 days later, he reached Dundee and he broke the law by making salt. Now, this was an event that was publicized all over the world at that time. It became a symbol of Indian resistance or disobedience to British rule. In those days, there was no internet, no television, no live broadcast, but news reports were there. Newspapers and the media was still a powerful force, and people all over the world knew about it. Let's look at the distance that was involved. Now, look at the map on the left first. The starting point is Sabarmati Ashram. This is a suburb or just on the outskirts of Ahmedabad. And the end point was in Dundee or Dunda on the sea coast. So, all along the way, you had so many waypoints. Now, looking at the map on the right, he started with 79 participants, but by the time he reached the sea coast, the number was in the thousands. Everywhere that he stopped along the way, people listened to him, they got inspired, and they started following him. Now, just imagine the scale of this event. If it was today, the news channels would not stop talking about it. There would have been a live telecast going on and on and on. You can see also on the map on the right, what he would do is he would have two halts. He would stop once in the daytime and once at night. That means a total of 48 stops were there. 3 weeks and 3 days later, he reached the sea coast in Dundee or Dunda, and he broke the salt law. As I told you, I'll give you a small mathematical problem to solve. 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers. So convert 240 miles to kilometers. Start. The correct answer 240 miles equals 386.243 kilometers. We told you that they were covering about 10 miles a day. Gandhi is already 61 years old. So, for an old person to walk that long, 16 kilometers per day for 24 days, that's a remarkable achievement. So, this also showed you the stamina of Gandhi. The first important question is how was this movement or how was this civil disobedience movement different from the non-cooperation movement? Non-cooperation movement was successful, but Gandhi had called it off because people had gotten violent. They were getting out of control. Now the difference between 1921-22 and 1931, mind you, this is 10 years later, the public is breaking the law. They are breaking the colonial laws or the laws set up by the British, and they are being asked to do it non-violently. I think they had enough time to reflect on the mistakes, and now they were following it just as Gandhi would have liked them to follow. How did they break the laws? So, what Gandhi did in Dundee, he broke the law which said that you can't manufacture salt. You can't make salt without permission. So, everyone did it wherever they could reach the sea. But not just salt, they broke other laws also. The most effective and powerful movement yet in India. The British were not going to just keep quiet and surrender. They began arresting the Congress leaders one by one. And slowly, all of them, including Gandhi, were also in prison. When the leaders are in prison, the followers are without any guidance, any leadership, so violence breaks out. What Gandhi didn't want to happen started to happen. Remember, he was a strong follower of non-violence. He did not compromise on non-violence. But violence ultimately happened. There are so many examples, but I'll just give you one example of Abdul Ghaffar Khan or Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. He was a freedom fighter and a nationalist from Afghanistan. Now, he was also a follower or a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi. When he was arrested, his followers they demonstrated in Peshawar and they were not afraid of even the police firing and the armored cars, and many were killed. Now, this is also an unfortunate result of that civil disobedience movement, but it shows you the extent of support Gandhi had and the extent of support for the civil disobedience movement. Yes. Now, when Gandhi himself was arrested, the workers or the industrial workers, factory workers in Sholapur, they also got quite violent. They attacked the police posts, The municipal buildings, the law courts, railway stations, all of these were structures that symbolized British rule or the British government. And the British government got afraid. They were frightened and they had more and more brutal oppression. Now the record is that about 1 lakh people were in the jail. They were arrested and they didn't spare anyone. They were without any mercy. No mercy was shown even to women and children. The British responded the only way they knew how to respond, by force, and people suffered everywhere. A lot of repression were there. What does Gandhi do? Gandhi also realized that the people cannot sustain suffering forever. For example, what is going on now? We were in lockdown, or everything was closed for about 2 months now, about more than 40 days. We're nearing 50 days now. And slowly, the government also realizes that people's suffering has gone on for too long, it has to open up. Gandhi also realized that, and then he suspended it and entered into a pact or agreement with Lord Irwin on 5th March 1931. Now, what was that agreement? Gandhi agreed to take part in the second roundtable conference. Remember the first roundtable conference? Congress had boycotted it. By the way, the first roundtable conference was a great disappointment even to those who joined that conference. Gandhi agreed to join a second roundtable conference, and the government would release the political prisoners and also allow them to make salt for their own consumption. That means salt for your cooking or for to use at home, not to sell. So Gandhi went to England, he went to London to take part in the second roundtable conference. But here again, they could not agree and the negotiations broke down. Why did they break down? On the issue of separate electorates. Gandhi didn't want anything to do with caste or religion or a color or creed. And the British, they had already started their policy of divide and rule, the provision for separate electorates. That means Muslims and Hindus, Sikhs, Parsis, Jains, Anglo-Indians, princely states, they had their own electorates. Gandhi didn't want that. Indians are generally not so narrow-minded, but the politics of religion of hate always puts that in your head. Wise people will look beyond that. It's only small people who look at these differences. So Gandhi also realized that he didn't want this issue to come up again and again and trouble Indians into the future. So he didn't agree on this issue of separate electorates. So the second roundtable conference was again a disappointment, or you could call it a flop. Then he returned disappointed. So he relaunched the movement and it continued for a year. But with most of the leaders and followers in the jail, people also slowly lost interest in it. And by 1934, it lost its momentum. And then Gandhi formally, officially, he stopped this movement. So in the history of the freedom struggle, and with Gandhi, we find start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And people don't understand. And people were a little frustrated and they questioned Gandhi. Maybe India could have got independence in 1922 itself. But Gandhi didn't want that. Now the reasons are explained very clearly by Edward James Olmos. He said that I believe that Gandhi was correct. Non-violent civil disobedience is the only way to bring about change that allows people to change and not get killed in the process. Gandhi also realized that yes, we might get independence, but people will surely die, they will suffer, they will be hurt, they will be injured, and he didn't want that. He was not in a hurry. Now, what Gandhi also says is that, and I will leave you with this thought, think about it. There is more to life than increasing its speed. So for a young person, remember that you are full of energy and you want to go very fast. But then if you continue at a speed which you cannot maintain or cannot handle, most likely you will burn out. So best thing is to go slow and steady. And as the saying goes, slow and steady wins the race. And Gandhi eventually did win the race. India got independence on the 15th of August 1947.